the last time you went to an art museum? When I ask students or acquaintances this question, I'm often met with blank stares, as if I've just asked, when's the last time you went to the moon? The fact is, most of us don't go to art museums on a regular basis. Now, I believe art has the unique ability to ignite our imagination, to engage us in a sense of place, to invite renewed attention to the world around us. And so if this is true, if art really does have the power to change our perception and our practice in the world, then the failure to put ourselves in relationship to the arts, as we do when we go to the museum, may be more problematic than we think. If art truly has the power to change the way we see the world, then we need to be experiencing it, and experiencing it frequently. But I'm not here today to tell you to go to the art museum more. In fact, what I want to call you to do today may be more countercultural than that. I would like to explore the ways that you might live with art, that art can permeate every place of your life. I believe art should be a part of the fabric of our everyday lives. When we go to work or to church or to school, when we come home and sit on the sofa, when we walk around our neighborhoods, art should permeate those places. The museum, in other words, isn't the only place art should live. Art has the power to occupy all of the places of our lives and transform all the areas of our day-to-day experience. For instance, how might the experience of art in our home transform our imagination and our perception of the world? Think for a minute. How many original pieces of art do you have in your home? And I don't mean expensive pieces of art, because honestly, most of the fine art on the market we can't afford. What I mean when I ask that question, though, is how many objects in your home were made by human hands? How many bear the signature of another human being attempting to see the world in a whole new way? How many even have you made yourself in responses to your experiences of curiosity or beauty? Several years ago, my husband and I decided to display almost exclusively original art in our home. And the first piece that we ever bought together was from a local art festival in Atlanta. And since then, we have acquired lots of prints and paintings, some from local artists when we've traveled, others from friends of ours, some I've painted myself. And not all of these are museum quality pieces. None of them are probably going to find themselves into the canon of art history. None of them are going to change the world. But I don't think that's the only point of art. And I don't think that's the central significance of art in our lives and culture. While the art museum can acquaint us with the great geniuses and masters of art history, and this is no doubt important, you should be going to the art museum, art that we live with, artifacts of human creativity that find themselves in our day-to-day experience may be more transforming for our sense of personal identity and our communities at large. So, for instance, if we look at history, we see that churches were filled with paintings and sculptures to think about the Bible and their theological imagination. Town squares were filled with sculptures and monuments to convey political power or triumph. People's homes were filled with objects made by human hands that bore the marks of both their maker and their world. What if we could return to these more historical ways of living with art while reflecting our 21st century concerns? So for instance, how can art help train our memory, both personal and cultural? Living with original art in my home has taught me how to better remember. So for instance, this piece by Ph.D. Taylor, when I see it on my wall, I'm reminded of a friend whose hands have touched this image. I'm reminded to think of her or even to pray for her. And I'm thankful for the beauty that she's brought into my day-to-day experience. When I see an icon like this on my wall, I'm reminded of the communion of saints in which I dwell. When I cover myself with a quilt made by my grandmother, I'm reminded of the family tradition from which I've come. And when I cover myself with that quilt, that's a presence that's far greater than something I've bought from a store. I live with a communion of people, both living and dead, inside the walls of my house. And that community teaches me that I'm a member of something far greater than myself. The arts in my home have also taught me how to reject consumerism and homogeneity. So when I drink my coffee from a mug, like this one made by potter Charlie Mabry, I am invited to think about the earthly materials, the clay that has been drawn from the earth and that now I'm using in my day-to-day experience. It's been signed and formed by human hands. I'm invited to think about the ways that human work can show me that I'm not made by the products or the trends that I consume. It pushes me to think more widely about how I engage with the world. Original art in our home has also cultivated a sense of place. It's taught me how to think about my place as particular and located. I am surrounded by objects made by embodied human people in my community. And so when I look at something like this print by Bonnie K. Whitfield, I'm reminded of the ordinary beauty, the ordinary presence of the world around me. Some of the art in my home presses me to consider social practices and expectations, like this print by Steve Prince entitled Assault, which explores themes related to civil rights and social justice. And when I see this image in my home, I'm invited to reflect on the ways that I might begin to open up my personal space to more diverse community. The arts, in other words, aren't just decoration for our homes. They can be profound ways to reflect, profound avenues for self-reflection. And so if this is true, if art can help us think about our own sense of personal identity, then how much more might the arts in public spaces and in organizations help that as well? We might begin to put pressure on our communities and organizations to think about the diverse ways that art might cultivate social belonging, that it might amend our ways of understanding each other in the world, that it might create a culture, that it might motivate a more hospitable imagination in the world. And so some churches have thought about this, and so this is Holy Innocents Episcopal Church in Atlanta. And there they employ local artisans and craftspeople to decorate their church. And everything from metalwork to stained glass to blown glass to paper and fabric arts. And what that does for that community is it creates this sense of belonging in that unique community. They are there in that community together, but not to stay there. It pushes them out into the world to cultivate communities elsewhere, to bring people into that sense of belonging. And so the art influences their imagination for mission in the world. Or if we look at somewhere like Colquitt, Georgia, where they employ murals to think about their unique history and identity in the world, it can influence the way in which we see small towns that might otherwise be forgotten. Colquitt is interesting in that it has 16 murals throughout its town, the largest of which is this 27,000 square foot mural of a peanut farmer on a silo. And they also employ professional stage directors to produce the official folk life play of Georgia, Swamp Gravy, where professional directors, lighting assistants, producers come in, but they tell local stories and they allow local residents to act. And this brings them together in this history and this sense of tradition of their place that allows them to transcend time and race and culture, social location. I'd invite you to think about the ways that you have lived with art in the past. All of you have lived with art in some way. But more than that, I would like to invite you to think about the ways that you might live with art in the future. Not just by going to the museum more, but by bringing the arts into your home, into your workplace, into your schools, into our public buildings, to our public spaces outside. And so I'll end with a story to reflect on how art might be formative when it permeates this everyday experience of our life. When I was 5 years old, my mom took a painting that I had done and she matted it and she framed it and she hung it on the wall of our home. And when she did that, she afforded it this pride of place, this significance that children's art is often not afforded. And what my mom taught me when she did that was that it's important to live with the things that we make, with things that we find beautiful, with things that move us into a supreme gratitude about the world that we live in. And my childhood home was filled with all sorts of things that my mom had made, wood burnings and needle points and drawn images, things that my dad had made from wood. And so all of those handmade objects in our home created this space that profoundly influenced my way of viewing the world, my way of viewing my role in the world. When my mom hung that painting there, and when they showed me through their own artistic practice, was that we all have creativity to share. And if we decide to use it and we decide to share it, we will have lived well. So not everyone will paint canvas or work with wood or make pots or sew quilts. But I think we all can begin to adopt practices that bring the arts into our life more. For instance, how might we support local artists? How might we introduce original art into our homes rather than buying it from national chain stores? How might we support public arts programs that cultivate a sense of belonging and shared creativity in the community? And I think even on top of those things, we might even begin to think about how we might make things in the world, things that connect us to the world in remarkably out-of-the-box ways. Now, your work may not ever find its way into a museum, and it might not even be what's traditionally considered good art. But in the process of making, you might find yourself more engaged with the material world around you. You might find yourself more thankful for the beauty that you experience on a day-to-day basis. You might find yourself consuming less and producing more. And you might even find yourself working and participating in your place and in your community in ways that break social boundaries and expectations, in ways that are remarkably hospitable and transformative and redemptive over time. And I'm not saying that art has the power to affect all of our contemporary problems. Art can't save the world. And art can't heal us as individuals and as communities on its own. But as the farmer and poet Wendell Berry writes, to preserve our places and to be at home in them is to fill them with imagination. We need an imagination big enough to contend with the issues that we face in the world today. Things that bear on our sense of place, like climate change and environmental destruction, racism, and inequitable dynamics of power across our societies and across the world. We need an imagination that allows us to see how we might not be identified primarily as consumers, but as producers. We need an imagination that allows us to reflect on the fact that we are either responsible or irresponsible, hospitable or alienating. Art has the unique ability to retrain our imagination and our practice. Live with art. Dwell in its presence. And I believe you will find your whole world changed. Thank you.